Today is the 22nd day of January 2015, and we begin a very sacred series with Alok Pandey. This series is on Savitri. 53 years ago, I was introduced to Savitri by A.B. Purani, and it changed my whole life. When I came in 1961 to the ashram, Mother asked me to photograph the paintings by Huta of meditations on Savitri. She then gave me her blessings to read Savitri. For 10 years, I read at the Matrimandir once a week. Savitri is for me the way, the truth, and the light. Now, many years ago, Mother told Huta, only I can explain Savitri. But since that time, Mother has chosen amongst her children one whom I feel she has poured the most understanding into these mantric lines of Sri Aurobindo, and that is Alok Pandey. And I'm grateful to know him as a brother and to have him speak to us today about Savitri.
We are in the presence of infinity, an infinity of light, as you said, and an infinity of wonder and joy, an infinity of power, and much more that the human tongue can, at this point, it's unable to express. Leave aside understand. I also feel that Savitri is not something to be understood as it has to be dived deep into.
Yes.
Very often people ask this question that Sri Aurobindo gave so much importance to Savitri. And it is a book of, and it comes out from the yogic seer vision of Sri Aurobindo, so it's a book of yoga. And they want to know what practical methods of yoga are there in Savitri. And they get disappointed. Of course, there are always plenty of hints of practice also. For instance, those lines, in moments when the inner lamps are lit. In 3 lines, Sri Aurobindo beautifully gives the essence of meditation. In moments when the inner lamps are lit and life's cherished guests are left outside, our spirit sits alone and speaks to its gulfs. These 3 lines are magical. It's not about sitting, it's not about a posture, it's not about a technique or method, but a state of consciousness in which we awaken, we are drawn by the spirit within, and quite naturally, as we are drawn towards that, much that we are engaged with in our everyday life, superficial waking consciousness, that is left outside. So, in 3 lines is essence. And of course, the experiences of the way, many, many experiences, an understanding of the world, of creation, of ourselves, of life. But the beauty is that it's not so much about understanding Savitri. Mere reading of Savitri, engaging with it, or as the mother puts it so beautifully, spending time in its atmosphere is yoga.
I remember once a friend told me this story. He would go and visit Narad for tea. And every morning Aurobindo Basu was there.
Yes.
So he says to Narad, I'm having difficulty understanding Savitri. And suddenly this strong voice says, who told you you had to understand?
Yes.
Just read it.
Read it. Absolutely. In fact, what makes it sometimes worse is to try to understand it with the intellectual mind. And I have an analogy that comes to my mind. It's like an ape trying to understand man's poetic works. And the gap between an ape and the human intellectual mind is still something which may be bridged. But the gap between the present intellectual human consciousness and the spiritual truths embodied in Savitri is much more. So then what is the way? Because we have a tendency, that's how we are accustomed to. The mother gives several keys to us, and one of the keys is that one way is the yogic way of a superhuman effort at ascension. And as we have some touch of these experiences, which are of course too high and profound, and maybe one can just touch upon some of the fringes. That's one way, but obviously that's a way which for most of us is not there. Let's make it like that. But there's another door. And she says this is with regard to Dhammapada. And she says, that while it's difficult for the human mind to have a glimpse of the supramental, it's impossible. She says, yet there is a door, the psychic, through which you can have a glimpse. And I think that is the key to understanding, truly understanding. I think Savitri is not to be read by the mind and the dictionary and, intellectual weaving of thoughts. They are fine, they are useful, particularly, there are some words, some phrases which can be very, the mind can get involved in them. But more importantly, it has to be read with the heart, and the deeper heart. It's a very beautiful poem of Sri Aurobindo, The Word and the Silence, where he speaks about who is the speaker and who is the hearer. And he says the soul is the hearer. The soul hears Savitri. It responds to Savitri.
Yes.
It dances to the tune of Savitri. It rejoices with the wonder of Savitri. Because, there is again, the intellectual mind has a tendency to divide Savitri into sub-themes, and all these are valid. It's not that it's invalid. For instance, there is a theme of death, theme of fate, theme of love. Love, of course, runs through, and death also runs through and through. Actually, all these themes run together simultaneously in Savitri. But most importantly, there is the other way of looking at it, not so much as sub-themes which are objective to the intellectual mind, but sub-themes which is sensitive, inner something can catch. For instance, the joy of Savitri, the wonder of Savitri, the magic of Savitri, and the beauty of Savitri, the power of Savitri.
Yes.
It's not something which, like they are very powerful lines. In a sense, every line contains all these. But let's take a line like, when there is a call to the quest. O force-compelled, fate-driven, earth-born race, how long shall you tread the circling tracts of mind around your little self and petty things? It looks like there is a voice from high bidding us to wake up, to arise, awake. It reminds us of those mantric lines in the Upanishads. Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. Now, these lines have such a power. And that's why reading Savitri is yoga, because ultimately yoga is an effort to unite at certain planes and levels of consciousness so that we too can embody those states which right now are alien to us. I mean, they are hidden in some state of sleep, as they say, Shushupti of the Upanishads. And it's difficult to access these states. These states can reshape our lives. But Sri Aurobindo makes them accessible to us through the power of the word. And that's the work of the mantra. Very often people ask also that, Sri Aurobindo says that, he used Savitri as a means of ascension. So what does it mean? I mean, had he not already ascended? He used Savitri as a means of ascension. He rewrote it nearly 12 times. Now, it's a very, very well-known ancient truth in Indian tradition that the mantra is used as a means of ascension. It's the whole purpose of the mantra is to help the rishi ascend, and all those who would follow him can, by the power of the mantra, arrive at a state of consciousness. The mantra is always used as a means of ascension. But what Sri Aurobindo does is, traditionally the rishi uses a particular mantra for ascension, discards it, then after a while another mantra comes. That's the normal course, even in our inner sadhana. Sri Aurobindo charged Savitri with the highest possible mantra, the vibrations of the highest possible mantric opening into these higher spheres. Now, how the mantra helps or how the mantra comes into being, there are states of consciousness which are intangible, and we can receive their touch, we can climb into them, but there is very little which is brought back to earth. And yogis are known to talk about trance, but they bring back very little. And when they bring back something like a memory from some far off plane, how to really embody it, how to express it. So the mantra is an automatic at that particular plane, that state of consciousness, the power of consciousness, the light of consciousness, the truth of consciousness which is at that plane, embodies itself in a certain body of sound words. That's the mantra. So when that embodiment takes place, it helps to ascend, because now it works like a two-way bridge. On one side, it makes tangible what is intangible, makes sensible what is still in the realm of abstraction, because the states of consciousness are not easy to embody. Sri Aurobindo speaks of that. I mean, it's in fact, when I think Nirodha or Amal Kiran asked him that for you all these experiences are common, and all these expressions, you are a master poet, why should you have to labor to write and rewrite Savitri 12 times? And he says the higher planes are not as accommodating as that. It's not simple to embody them. That too in a body of sounds, you can experience them. You can be lost in a state of trance in them. We all know that. You can even to some extent bring back that memory and communicate it to few disciples. But to embody it in a body of words and sounds is not at all easy, because the human language is not geared. It's a two-dimensional language trying to capture a three-dimensional world, but the reality is at once one and infinite. How to capture it in a body? Human language is inadequate. Mother speaks about it, that our language is not yet ready to speak of supramental experiences. So this was the challenge, and once the right embodiment is found, then it becomes easy for all those who are going to follow to use it like a key. So it has to be used in that sense. It is a spiritual key given to us, the mantra, and if we just reflect upon it, that was the path of the Upanishads, because the same problem arises. People ask, okay, Upanishads are great scriptures, but what is my take-home point? We want to take home point. And you will see in entire Upanishad, Mundak Upanishad, such a wonderful Upanishad. It doesn't give methods, it doesn't give an easy to do things, but it will give a very powerful mantra, something like, the famous Satyameva Jayate Nanitam Satyena Pantha Vitato Devyana. By truth, it is truth that wins and not falsehood. By truth, the gods have laid the path for man to walk. Now, it's very powerful. Or Shurashya Dhara Nishita Duratya, walking on a razor edge. Now, how does one make right use of these mantras? If you go into analysis, understanding, looking for a method, easy to do practice, it is to bring it down much, much, much below. But the direct way is to reflect and meditate upon them in quietude. One picks up a passage from Savitri, and without bringing all these cobwebs and preconceived notions, ideas, and just tries to penetrate deeper and deeper and deeper. And there too, if the mind is active, that how should I read it exactly? It's the same analog as people ask when I meditate, how should I sit? The sitting is all right. Well, it should not be too lax, it should not be too bolt straight. It should be something where you can forget about the sitting. So also the highest music is that where you forget about the technique. There is a technique. But the highest expression of music is when the singer or the musician is so lost and wrapped in it that he has forgotten about the technique and essence. Technique is after all a device. So instead of too much focusing upon, each word has to be pronounced precisely like this, it has its truth. Like the Vedic, there are Vedic chanting in the schools which teach chanting, but there are people who chant and chant and chant, but get nothing of the Vedas. So we have to see it both ways. It's excellent. But if we have to get the essence, it is through an inner opening, reflecting upon these truths. Sometimes simply letting them work inside. All can be done if the God touch is there.
And not vain repetition.
Not vain repetition.
There's a story from Alok Pandey of a man who was revered in his village for saying a mantra 100,000 times every day.
Yes.
And he went to a far-off village, visiting friends and all, and a man came up to him and he said, what is your mantra? And the fellow forgot it.
Absolutely. The mother speaks about it, just mechanical repetition.
Yes.
I mean, it has some effect, but that's not the real essence of it. And there are two more things which I feel is important. One is to treat the divine as a living reality, And if the divine is there, I'm using if in inverted commas, if the divine is there, if there is a greater truth, if there is a being, consciousness, existence that is conscious, self-aware, dwells in all beings, then surely he will supplement all our efforts and help us understand. It's as simple as that. Pavitra Da has written a very small booklet on meditation. You must have read it, on meditation and discipline. There is something very beautiful about that booklet. People talk about so many methods of meditation. I have read books, seen them, and all that. But he mentions something which personally in my life I found it practically very useful. Of course, I had not read it. I tried it and it worked. It came spontaneously. And it always works wonder. And it is offer your meditation to the divine. Now, several times I have seen, sometimes meditation is very natural, beautiful, you go into the depths. At other times, you are struggling, you are just simply sitting. But if we offer to the mother and pray that, Mother, help me to meditate. You pull me inside. I will try to go within, but you pull me from within. It's so wonderful. So why not do it with Savitri? Why not do it with Sri Aurobindo in the mother's books? That mother, you are there. You help me understand.
Yes.
You create in me all that is necessary to really have the joy of revelation of Savitri. It's a book of revelation. And revelation has to be understood by a corresponding faculty. It cannot be understood by that which is much below. As I said, ape trying to understand the human mind and its activities. So the doors of revelation open when there is quietude, inner quietude. And second thing or third thing which I feel is very important is to turn to Savitri not just as a poetry, not just as a epic and, sometimes I mention a bit humorously, iambic pentameter and, with all those things, not even as mystic poetry, but as a living embodiment, a testament of the Divine Mother. It's the story of the Divine Mother. And that's why it surpasses, the Vedas, surpasses the Upanishads. Where many times people compare it to the Vedas. Now, there's something missing in the Vedas. They don't, this kind of a blind reverence should not be there. Vedas are very high, beautiful, but they are not the highest. They are pointers towards the highest reality. But what is missing there is the secret of God's birth in time. And the Gita is the one scripture which hints at it. And at least couple of Puranas like the Vishnu Purana, which Sri Aurobindo speaks of as a very profound occult scripture. But this is something which is the greatest secret. And it's amazing that human mind doesn't take interest in it. Yeah. Mother speaks about it. Several places in Agenda she speaks of the greatest secret. What is the greatest secret? The greatest secret is God's birth in time. That which is infinite, eternal, immutable, the absolute, the perfect, the alone. And then he says the absolute, the perfect, the immune, our mask of imperfection has assumed. This is a mystery. I would say the mystery of mysteries. And Savitri is an unraveling of that mystery. It's the story of the Divine Mother looking at us, at creation, at life from the eyes of the Mother. She is lending her sight to us. What more can we, ask for? Often people, we had this centenary celebration of Sri Aurobindo and the mothers coming together. So people ask very often that, different ways people have been celebrating it, seminar and all these things. So I was just sharing this, that, when the mother came for the first time, people around him also had been seeing Sri Aurobindo. And the revolutionaries were also seeing Sri Aurobindo. They were admiring Sri Aurobindo. They had respect for Sri Aurobindo. Some saw him with suspicion and doubt, some with awe and admiration. But the mother saw differently. Yes. She saw him as the divine incarnate upon earth. Now, if the centenary would be really worthwhile, if instead of all these seminars, we could pray to Mother, give me those eyes with which you saw Sri Aurobindo. Yes. We don't have those eyes normally.
In which he saw her.
He saw her. Then it is finished.
3 words.
Yes.
When he saw her. You are she.
You are she. And then it's over. Because it's the source of all hope, all joy. His presence is enough. So, how do we see Savitri? Sri Aurobindo saw it as an embodiment of that truth. The mother saw it as a living guide. And Sri Aurobindo says that it is not a mere allegory. No. The characters are not personified qualities. Yes. Sometimes we reduce everything to a symbol. We just, read that little bit. Yeah. He says, here it is.
Yeah. Especially the last sentence.
Yeah, the last sentence.
Yes.
Still, because he speaks about the symbol, the symbolic nature of each character. Because earlier he has said that, like from the previous Vedic cycle, it is one of the many symbolic myths of the Vedic cycle. But, human mind has this tendency, it's a symbol. So we are lost in, the real thing is only behind. Yes. It's the symbol and we get the symbol like, people reduce Mahabharata to a symbol. And there is a truth in it. But then Sri Aurobindo says, still, this is not a mere allegory. The characters are not personified qualities, but incarnations or emanations of living and conscious forces with whom we can enter into concrete touch. See, he is giving us the key.
Yes, right there.
Right there, at the very beginning. Savitri is not a book. Savitri is a living and conscious entity. Yes. And we can enter into touch with her. Yes. Through the book, we can get into touch with her. We can get into touch with her through an inner opening. She is the embodiment of the light of the Supreme, and then we can have a new sight to see the book. So it works both ways. They are concrete. Look at the word. Living and conscious forces. They are not, those who 17,000 years back she was there and they are no more. Now the story is there. With whom we can enter into concrete touch. And they take human bodies in order to help man and show him the way. From his mortal state to a divine consciousness and immortal life. The key is right there.
Yes.
They are there. The
Divine,
human representative
yes.
of the word.
Divine consciousness and immortal life.
This is the whole story, the Sega.
Yes.
And I think that's where the epic nature of Savitri comes. So as I was saying, we have to see it with those eyes. At present we are like Dyumatsena.
Mm-hmm.
We are blind. So, if we are blind and we read, how much we will have the joy of revelation.
Yeah.
It's like a kindergarten student can make sentences. He can understand the meaning of the sentences. Several times this problem comes, particularly, say a simple thing like yoga of the king. And, people have tried to translate Savitri and really it should not be done except for one's own joy. That's all.
Agreed.
Mother spoke about it in a letter to Prithvi Singh Nahar. And I think if one has to read Savitri, especially Savitri, I'm not talking of other works of Shobindra and the mother, where the rule is, Shobindra is best read in English and the mother is best read in French. But nevertheless, one can read the translations. But with Savitri, it should be left as it is. One should learn English to read Savitri.
Impossible to catch the mantra.
Yes, impossible to
other
catch the
languages.
mantra. Absolutely. And see, the translations create so much problem. Even recently, just some time back, there is this line, a prayer, a master act, a king idea. Can link man's strength to transcendent force. Then miracle becomes the common road. Now, you see, the word king idea has been translated in Hindi as Raj Vichar, Rajasi Vichar. Now, that's not how one can get it. Here, the word king is in terms of something which is at the peak, at the apex.
Yes.
It's not about king of an, And language, any language, has this subtlety.
Yes.
You see, what many times we forget that Sri Aurobindo has written this much in the way of the Vedic style. So in the Vedic style, you have the images, and these images have a physical meaning, and they have simultaneously another layer of meaning. And of course, Sanskrit is very, very flexible with that. English is a less plastic language.
Yes.
But Sri Aurobindo has handled it with the same dexterity and plasticity.
And enlarged it beyond.
Enlarged it beyond. For instance, that word which I think the other day I was saying very beautifully, griffin forefront.
Yes.
Now, griffin, if we go by the dictionary meaning, yes, it's a mythical creature with the face of an eagle and paws of an eagle and the hind of a lion. So this is, one can say. But when we look behind the expression, it is something so interesting. The griffin front of the night and day, it unrolls itself. This creature psychologically is what? It's something which confuses us. It's something which is non-existent. It's something which is one thing in the front where it can map the entire earth and heaven in one sight, but behind its feet are rested upon earth. So it opens many doors of meaning, like in the Rig Vedas, there is a mention of the soul as a swan with one leg below and the other up in the heaven. Now, obviously such a creature is an absurdity.
Yeah.
But it's so, when I read the griffin, the immediate sense that came was that, oh, here is such a wonderful thing that Like the lion, feet rested firmly on the ground
Yes.
with a sense of quiet power.
Yes.
And like the eagle soaring into the skies, its vision spanning the heaven and the earth. And that sense fits very well with what follows. The griffin forefront of the night and day, they unroll back. The mind's firmament unroll back.
Yes.
So, but if we go simply by the outer meaning, then many of these lines may, appear like the Vedic age, a bit absurd, like, the rishis are asking for cow and horses.
Yeah.
So many words are used very symbolically. It's a symbol, that part is there. At the same time, they are communicating states of consciousness, which one has to use images. There is no other way. And that's how, we have the very beginning, the symbol dawn.
And yet he says nothing is written with allegory.
Nothing is just allegory. It's a real thing.
Yes.
The night is real. It's a night we experience every day. It's also a night of the soul. It's a night of pralaya when the creation is gone. It's a night of inconscient. So all these things are facts. And we can take it at all these levels simultaneously. See, the beauty of Savitri is this, that it opens itself to many layers. And that's why I feel that there is no one way to really, understand a word for the sake of using word, understand Savitri. And one should not interpret Savitri. There is nothing like an interpretation of Savitri. It's a revelation. So if I read, and I have seen myself, and I'm sure you must have experienced it, and all Savitri lovers, that as we grow, the same passage conveys a very different meaning.
Yes.
And there is a joy with that. There was a joy when there was a revelation, and there is a repeat joy, like the marvel of the first descent.
And 50 years ago, there was a joy without knowing anything.
Without knowing anything. Because, that's how, and it's one of the signs that we are truly understanding is the joy that comes inside. It's the joy of sight, which cannot always be put in words.
Yes.
Simple thing, it was the hour before the gods awake. It's a marvelous line. I mean, what a moment of time Sri Aurobindo is taking us. Yes, physically, we know that every day there is a moment before the gods awake. In India, it's called as Brahma Muhurt, around 3 o'clock.
I see.
It's used. It's also, there's a whole, in India, tradition that there is a particular day in the year when it is said, now the gods are awake. So from now on, things will be different. This is a whole tradition background. Even there is a whole story where for 3 months in a year, Vishnu, the preserver of the worlds, is swallowed up by the darkness. So there is chaos. Now, this is important, very interesting, just touching upon this story, why this darkness comes. Now, people wonder, how can a god be swallowed up? Well, the preserver keeps things status quo. He balances, harmonizes. Now, if there has to be something new that has to come, that balance has to go. Vishnu must sleep. He too must be engulfed by the darkness. And then Shiva comes in to destroy it and a new creation starts. It's there in Indian thought. So you see, so many things get revealed by one simple line. It was the hour before the gods awake. He tells us physically that probably it's around 3 a.m. in the morning when Savitri wakes up and she gets, all the memory comes back that this is the day when Satyavan must die. It's also a moment before creation.
Yes.
And not just the first moment before creation, but also successive moments. As we read it subsequently, that after each dissolution, he says that something remained lurking inside like a memory. So you see, he draws such a wonderful parallel. Every day we go through this process. We sleep, we forget. There's a marvelous line, our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting.
Yes. And the mysteries process is the universe.
So, we sleep and we forget.
Yes.
We wake up and then new possibilities are before us. Similarly, we die and we are born again. And then civilizations collapse and build up again.
But
And
something is left.
Something is left. That is the beauty. Very often people are so distraught and they ask about, how are the memories of rebirth, transmitted. So a very simple example, and this comes very beautifully. Sri Aurobindo doesn't, it, it is something vague. It is not like, people try to give memories as very precise. I was so and so, such a, and everybody is a king or a saint or a sage. Nobody remembers the past life of a monkey. I'm sure we all must have been. But, everybody is somebody grand. So that is very satisfying to the ego. But that apart, these memories are not like physical outer things. They are moments, like mother speaks about, suddenly she heard a voice when she saw this child. This is Amenhotep. And the whole memory came back, what it meant.
Yeah.
So similarly, it is something vague. And yet, it is like a knowledge which comes at an appropriate point of time. So I use this analogy that when children learn building blocks and they do it wrong, and after a while, or if they are trying a puzzle, they do it wrong and it just gets washed off. After a while, they get up because they have not been able to complete it and go away. Then they try the puzzle again. Now, mind you, that essence of experience is not lost. They can do it better second time.
Yes.
And if they don't complete it, third time. Fourth time, they get it. If you ask them, do you remember every step? No, they don't remember every step. So it's like an essence. So every time creation goes through a process of dissolution, pralaya. That's one of the descriptions. Everything is not lost. Essence, knowledge remains. And it is rediscovered at an appropriate time. When the child sits back at the puzzle, he doesn't remember if while playing some other game he's asked, okay, tell me, how did you try to solve the puzzle? Did you put this piece first to that piece? First, that knowledge is not there. But when he's face to face with the problem, he's able to, get it. So that's how evolution takes place. In synthesis, Sri Aurobindo says that we are rediscovering many things, even in physical sciences. He says that whether it's the first time or more likely, there was a memory which was lingering,
Yes.
and we are recapturing it.
Yes.
So, it gives us hope. Savitri is a song of hope. It starts with hope. That's why it starts with the thick of night.
And it can be triggered,
It gets triggered.
gets triggered.
Always. See,
Yes.
with Savitri also, she knows that, such and such event is going to take place.
Right.
And she has prepared herself also. But even on that day, in the morning, to start with, she gets the memory of all those things. And before that, throughout the year, when Sri Aurobindo describes that how she lived constantly with grief, even there are lines in it,
Oh, yes.
the foe which she must feed with her own heart,
Yeah.
the suffering, the pain.
Yes.
But when the actual moment comes, when she is face to face with the moment of death, look how beautiful this image is. The moment of death is also the moment of immortality. It is the challenge. And that gives such a wonderful hope that every crisis is a door to liberation. And this is what we find in the Gita. The dance of death gives birth to the song of immortality. So the densest night prepares for the greatest dawns. No wonder it starts with the dawn, the symbol dawn.
Yes.
It's a book of hope, of light, of beauty, of grandeur, of splendor. And that's the joy and wonder of Savitri. Just to conceive that where there is utter darkness, dissolution, there is hope, there is light, there is beauty, there is grandeur, there is splendor waiting to be born. I think that's enough for man to walk the path. So
We'll take a break.
Yeah, we'll take a break.